Tonight, I want to continue our series, Psalm 121, Stand Firm, is what we're going to talk about tonight. Last week was Look Up. And I think we hear this psalm so many times, or maybe you've seen it written somewhere. Or I remember my mom would say this psalm over my sister and I every night before we went to sleep. And it was in my heart and my soul, but not until recently when I started really unpacking what was taking place in those 8 verses did I realize how profound it is. So I want to read it to us right now. I'm reading from the NIV. Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. Tonight I want to talk about 3 and 4, those 2 verses. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. What's the context of this passage? We kind of jumped into it a little bit last week, and I'm not going to belabor that point. But we know that this is being written, and most likely out of the Israelites when they're in exile. And so they're looking, maybe in Babylon, when they break down the dating, that's where they think they might be, and they're looking over the Mesopotamian fields, valleys, towards the direction of Jerusalem, Mount Zion and Moriah. Looking, saying, longing for the presence of God, desiring to see his presence. And in this statement, they're talking about the truths of who God is and his character. He's a faithful God. He's a deliverer. And so when we look at this passage and we understand the context, it brings a little bit more depth into what's taking place. And it makes it a little bit more practical for you and I. Makes it more practical for you and I as we engage, Lord, what are you saying in the midst of this passage? You know, how often, though, do we turn away from kind of fundamental truths about God, things that seem elementary, things that seem kind of maybe childish, and I say it in the sense of, oh, I've heard that before, or I've heard that statement before, the Lord won't let me slip, okay, he holds me, he doesn't sleep, yeah, okay, all these things. We hear them, and we might even say they feel childish, but I'm challenging you tonight. You know, I so often find that in trials, tribulations, difficulties, many times it's the very simple and profound truths of God and his character that help get me through. It's those simple truths. And so that's what we're going to jump in tonight. Standing firm. It's the truth that God's not going to let us slip. He is not going to let you or I slip, and he doesn't sleep. He's our keeper. Actually, in some translations, it's very interesting. Instead of watches, it says keeper. Do you know what keeper means? Defender, protector, like a shepherd with his sheep. He's our guardian. That word is perhaps the best translation for it, our guardian. You know how you hear statements, people are like, oh, I was going through this, and all of a sudden that person came out and they helped me. They were my guardian angel, right? Or we say maybe like, I know God has given us guardian angels to protect us, keep us safe. But what about like a guard, someone who's standing on guard? What are they doing? They're looking, they're protecting whatever it is that they've been assigned to do. And that's the description describing who God is for you and for me. Not let our foot slip. This is what I want to talk about. Not let our foot slip. We might have heard that. It's like, okay, whatever. Who's broken their leg before? Maybe they've broken their ankle, their foot. Anyone? Raise your hand. Yeah? Sprained your ankle? Anyone sprain your ankle? There we go. Lots of those. Lots of those. I have never broken any bone in my body except under my big toe. And it was like a hairline break, but it like ruined my whole, I never broke a bone in my body. But it was this little tiny thing. And I want to tell you how it happened, because it's embarrassing. So, yes, at one time I was able to do like a front flip. This is not bragging because it's actually more shameful, because I'm thinking I couldn't even do a somersault right now. I'm out of shape. Sure you can, yeah. Sure you can. You do them at home all the time. Yeah. So So I was at college, and you ever have those moments, maybe some of you, maybe a few of you have these moments where you just have like sudden spurt of energy and like people are around and stuff. And so there's people around outside the dorms, and there was this bench there, and I was talking to some guys, and maybe there were some girls there. I don't know. I wasn't dating Ann at the time. If she would have seen this happen, she would have been like, never given me a chance. So I'm like, oh, there's a girl there. I was kind of like, oh, man, impress her. I'm a freshman, and I'm thinking like, oh, what will be impressive is to do a flip off this bench. Because I've been doing them off diving boards all summer. What's the difference? Well, the difference is the give. Diving board gives you a spring. So I run, and I jump on this thing, and I go to do the front flip, and I land like halfway, boom, right on my face, right on my foot. But I like pounce back up. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm in such pain, but trying to laugh it off. It's embarrassing. People are like, who is this person? That's so stupid of me. Like, who runs in the middle of a public place and is like, hey guys, oh, and then laughing and hobbling. I broke my toe. It's horrible. I had a cam walker. Is that what they're called? Those big things and big boot. Oh, so yes. So I broke my toe. Not really that applicable here, but yes. But you slipped on an ice? Yeah, I slipped off the thing. Have you slipped on ice before? Anyone watch YouTube videos of people slipping? It's so bad, but sometimes it's really funny, especially when they're trying to catch themselves from not falling. It's like that constant, like 20-foot, like tumble's about to occur. It's great. I do remember another story about slipping. We were in Tanzania, and I was with Tori Rasmussen, and we were on this trail. And has anyone ever hiked before in an area where there's loose rocks? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's very dangerous, right? And so, because you can lose your footing so quickly. And I remember we were hiking for a couple days, and Tori was in front of me, and we were going down this little valley, and he had literally slipped on loose rocks, and I was too far away. There was no one around him, and he went up like 1 foot, leaning almost 90 degrees further back. I mean, the guy was going down, and somehow he regained his balance. I personally think it was truly a miracle, because it would have been a very bad fall down this cliff. And he got back up. And I remember we all stopped there. We had like a breather moment. Whoa, okay, we got to be serious. We weren't focused here. We didn't have our game on in that moment, and something really dangerous almost took place. But you know, we can understand that in the practical sense. On ice, trying to do flips off of benches, in the Tanzanian jungles, in a hiking, in a trail, watching our feet. Where do we step? Let's make sure we have the proper foundation. But you know what? So often in our journey of life, which this passage in this song of Psalm 121 is talking about a journey that's taking place. We have to be aware of our footing. We have to be aware of what's going on with our foundation. Actually, the word slip means to shake, totter, deviate from the right course, to waver or fall. How often, though, in our life have you felt and had moments where you feel like you've lost your footing? Feel like you've lost your footing. Man, I slipped up here. Or yet I feel like I'm just so unstable right now. Everything in my life feels unstable. I really do feel like I'm slipping up here and there. I'm losing my balance. Lost my footing. Maybe there was an area in your life you felt so strong. You were so strong in that area. And now, through circumstances and situations, you've become weak. You've become weak now. These times often demand us to do something, self-reflection. Really reflect on where we're at, who we are. And so I was walking today, and I kind of got a picture through my experience. I was taking a walk, and I decided, you know what, I'm just going to throw on my little brown loafer shoes. You know, anyone have house shoes? Those are like your shoes you just slip on to go in and out and around the house, or maybe run out and get the mail. Anyone else have those shoes? Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle. I was like, yes, I have them, and they're brown as well. So no one else does? You need to get a pair. Your life will change. When you have the immediate slip-ons and slip-offs, phenomenal. So I put them on, and I'm like, I'm going to go on my walk, and I just throw them on. And I'm on my walk, and I'm outside, and I'm going, and I hit Blindberg Park, and I start hitting like some sandy areas because there's a lot of sand there. And all of a sudden, you know, I'm walking like this, and then I'm turning to walk like this, and then I'm getting just this horrible cut on the back of my heel. Do you know what I'm talking about? Right there, it's the worst. It's scraping. I'm like, man, I'm slipping here. Literally, I'm stumbling along. I've got these stupid shoes on. Why did I wear these shoes? And what I realized is that I was placing my balance on something that was unstable. Sure, those shoes were great for walking around my block. But when it came to actually hitting a different terrain, something that was a little bit more intense, they weren't sufficient anymore. And I got this picture, talking about this today, talking about stand firm. In life, I think a lot of times we slip on our shoes and we're like, yo, we can do this. And we're doing great, and we're feeling strong. And as we're going and as we're doing this journey of life, suddenly in the midst of it, we hit some tough terrain, we hit some difficulties, we hit some hard times, and now we realize what our balance is in, and it's not enough. And I felt like the Lord was saying to me in this analogy, kick off those shoes and put your feet in my hands. Kick off those shoes and put your feet in my hands. Let them become stable. But here's the deal. Being called to let go in life of our own abilities, surrendering those things to the Lord, that's tough. It takes humility. But we have to realize something, and this is what the psalm is saying here. God braces us. Like when you sprained that ankle, when you broke that leg, and you get that brace on there, and you get that bandage around there, it strengthens the very thing that once was weak. Actually, that cast becomes even stronger than what you once were. Many times, even sometimes, bones can heal over and be stronger than they were before. God braces us. He's what we need in order to have that balance. He won't let us slip. He won't let us fall. But the question is, what are you placing your life in? Psalm 18:2 says this, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation. He's my stronghold." God is our foundation. He's our strength. When we place our lives, when we place our feet, using that analogy, into his hands, you watch the terrain you can go over. You watch the things that you can succeed in. You watch the areas that were once weak become strong. 1 Corinthians 3:11 says this, "For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ." When you go further and you read in that passage there in 1 Corinthians, it's talking about, do we place our hope and our foundation in men, in money, in things? No. Christ is the only one who we can base our foundation in. Israel, in this passage, they found themselves in trouble. And you know how they always got in trouble? When you read through the Old Testament and you see Israel and you follow them through all their stories, do you know what always took place why they got in trouble? They became exiled, captured, taken over, is when they started putting their trust in something else besides God. When they started believing that they could do it on their own. That they had a different foundation. When they became self-sufficient and they lost their need for God, that's when they fell. And even this writer here in Psalm 121, he's encouraging us. He's telling us, and he's even speaking to the Israelite people through this song, saying we must put our hope in the Lord. He's our helper. His character is to hold us, to keep us stable, keep us from slipping. But what I want to challenge to you is, do you guys hear that vacuum? Is there a vacuum up there? Do you maybe go ask them to? I hear everyone's like, You know we're clean though here. We vacuum very well. Psalm 94:18. This is a challenge. "When I said, my foot is slipping, your unfailing love, Lord, supported me." See, I think sometimes with that whole I can do it on my own attitude, that whole thing that says, oh, I can do this. I've got this. We don't have the humility to say, stop. Lord, help me. I'm slipping. Sometimes we say it, by that time it's way too late. It's just way too late. We've already fallen into that pit. We've already fallen into that sin. What is that sin? What is that thing that slips you up? You know exactly what it is. And in those moments, we have to cry out like the psalmist said in Psalm 94:18. My foot is slipping. Lord, meet me. And what takes place? His unfailing love delivers them. Cry out to him. Who cares who's around you? We are such a surfacey, just society. We are all about kind of appearances, right? I mean, look, walk around the mall. Go to Smith Haven Mall, Roosevelt Field Mall. What everything is screaming like, how do you look? Appear this way. But the danger of it is that we do that so often, and then behind the scenes, we're slipping and we're falling every day. It's like we're on ice every single day. My challenge to you is cry out. Lord, help me. Lord, help me. And he'll be faithful. The second part is he does not sleep or slumber. Okay, here's some fun facts. Who likes to sleep? Raise your hand. Yes, yes, sleepers. That's so good. That's so good. Team Guyana, we're not going to sleep at all when we're over there. It's going to be great. I love it. Okay, I just saw a lot of team members like, yes. I'm like, yeah. 6 a.m. is back. Rise and shine. Get up. Sun's here and there's no blinds here. Okay, on average, a person sleeps 8 hours. Okay, 8 hours. Some of you are like 14. 8 hours of sleep a night. That's 1/3 of your day. If you live to the age 60, which I'm believing all of you will live beyond that, age 60, you would have slept 20 years of your life. Isn't that wild? You sleep 1/3 of your life. 20 years. Okay. Our body needs sleep. Actually, chemically, physiologically, if you don't get sleep for a certain amount of time, you can begin to go crazy. How many have been there? Just enter a dorm room during finals week. People are like, hey, bro. Hey, bro. You've been pacing for 4 hours with your eyelids. So you need sleep. It is essential. Oh, man. I can remember, like, at college, probably 4 a.m. I had the weirdest sleep schedule. I would go to sleep at 12:30 at night, wake up at 2:30, and then study till like 6:30 and go back to sleep because that was when everyone was sleeping, so I could get sleep. And I would be that guy like pacing in these loafers. I had my shoes then too, but they were loafers. And there was a puddle in the middle of our dorm. We called it the swamp. So you're like pacing, leaping over it, just studying hours. Look like a crazy man. My eyes burning, Red Bull, so unhealthy. Don't follow my example. But just that whole aspect. And you can begin to feel like a little crazy sometimes. You're sitting there, you can't grab your thoughts. Actually, why do you think prisoners of war and when they take someone captive many times, part of torture would be sleep deprivation? They won't let them sleep. They only let them sleep 30 minutes, an hour. The person begins to go crazy, get desperate. People change when they don't get sleep. In high school, it was prom, and so it sounds like such a cliche, like high school story about startup. It was prom of 2009. So we had finished like all night, our whole class, 2005 class. We were hanging out. And then after that, I was actually going with one of my friends, Joel, to Disney World like the next day. So we had to drive. He lived in Mattituck, all the way out to his house, which was about an hour drive. And it's like 6 a.m. We'd stayed up all night. I don't think I've ever been so tired. Have you had those moments where you are I'm talking exhausted, painfully. You want to cry. You're like, I just want to sleep. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those painful. Okay, so we're in the car and he has to drive. So I'm like, sweet. I'm going to lean back. I'm like, you all right? Yeah, you all right? Yeah, I'm all right, man. I'm all right. And then I'm like, John, he's like, you can't go to sleep, please, because I'm going to fall asleep. Like, I need you to keep me up. I'm like, I can't. Let's pull over. But we had to catch a plane. He's like, I need. So you know what he did? He took a lighter, and every time I dozed off, he lit it under my nose. That's a true story. So I'm like fighting, and 1 minute of that fight when you conk out, it's like, oh, it's glorious. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what did you do? He's like, I told you have to stay up with me. So he's driving just like the whole time. It was horrible. So torturous. We got into a van and drove to LaGuardia Airport. We didn't remember a thing. We just crashed in the back. But, okay. In this passage, God's character is being revealed. The character of God and who he is. He's not mortal like we are. He doesn't need his sleep. He doesn't need food. See, at that time, though, many pagan gods were gods who would sleep. The people who created those gods, and their gods would sleep and slumber. Maybe that's why they said, well, that's why he's not responding or answering. Our God is sleeping. But see, our God is a guardian who is constantly watching, constantly awake. He's unceasing in his vigilance toward us. But there might be times in your life, I know I've had these, where you ask the question, is God even watching what's happening? Does he even care? I've been there before. God, do you even care? Do you even see what's happening in my life right now? Because sleeping can sometimes communicate not caring. Case in point, when I see you guys dozing off in church, it's okay. Or Friday night, that's all right. I really do. I'm like, I know how it is, because I have been in those places. I have been in those places too. Where you're like, and I'm like, you know what? I'd rather you not be looking at me like that. Just close your eyes and go to sleep, rather than like sleeping with your mouth open and your eyes slightly open. Oh, there was the youth pastor's son, Israel. He's just one of the cutest kids here, Pastor Mike and Lori's son. It was a service a couple weeks ago, and they were sitting in front of us, and he was fighting it. And this kid is just so cute, and he's a little like football player, center, and he's how old? Maybe, 10 or 8? So he's like, do you know the head bob? Where you're like, the whole time, and he's like, looking at his mom, like, please, and she's like, just a couple minutes. He's like, I can't do it. I can't, that whole battle of just the sleep. Oh, let me sleep. But sometimes, it can communicate not caring. We use that in our society as a joke. When someone's talking and it's boring, it's like, we do that. Like, I don't care. Okay. But sometimes we take that into our relationship with God. Lord, are you sleeping? Do you not care? Why isn't something happening? Sometimes we misinterpret his silence for the absence of his presence and love. But just because there's silence, that doesn't mean it negates the truth of his promises. Please hear that. Just because there's silence, it doesn't negate the truth of his promises. I want to invite the band to come up now at this time. And now just stay with me on this. Hebrews 13, 5-6. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. So we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? A promise of God. Please. He cares. He's always watching. Psalm 17:8. Keep me as the apple of your eye. Hide me in the shadow of your wings. Literally, the apple of the eye means the pupil. No part of the body is more protected, more delicate, more tender, more precious. And God describes us as the apple of his eye, constantly looking at us, loving us, watching us, even when we're sleeping and when we're up, when we're going through trials and difficulties and when it's great times. He's always there. He doesn't sleep. He doesn't slumber. Maybe tonight you just have to be reminded of that. I remember a time in my life where I had to be reminded of that. About a year and a half ago, I shared with you guys about a time that I was walking through many years ago that I consider a very dark night in my own soul. And I was so confused, and I was so lost, and I felt so just overwhelmed, and I felt God's silence. Really, I felt his silence. It was like, where are you, Lord? Where are you? Come on, God, where are you? I'm out, I'm doing missions. I've dedicated my life for this whole months on months to do missions, to go tell people about who you are, when really I'm crying out, do you even care? And I remember it was at the end of this time, and I was climbing up an incline. I was hiking in Colorado. I was by myself at this point, and that's in that moment, this is the cry in my heart. I said, Lord, I'm going to throw stones in my backpack as symbolism of what I'm walking through and what I feel I'm carrying. Even though I feel like you don't care. Even though I feel very alone and I feel you're so distant. And as I was hiking up there, I was by myself in the middle, and a random guy coming down looked at me, and he said, I don't normally do this, but I want to tell you something. I said, all right. He said, I just feel that God wants you to know he sees and knows what you're walking through. And you're going to get through this. And in that moment, it reminded me of the truth of his promises. It reminded me he sees me. I can never escape his sight, his eyes. His love is unfailing. My hope, my trust, my faith is in him. He's an unshakable foundation. All of that in one moment. And maybe tonight, that is what this night is for you. Because I felt this on my heart so strongly. To say to you, to remind you, he sees you. He knows what you're walking through. You're not alone. You are not alone. He knows. He's omnipresent. He's never disconnected or disengaged. Never. We get disconnected. We disengage from life. We have moments where it's just like, and 2 hours, 3 hours go by. Maybe we're just looking at TV. He never disengages. He's always there. He's always connected with us. Psalm 121, 3 through 4. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. Let's stand up together, and I just want to encourage you. God is our helper. He's our foundation. He's our guardian. Cry out to him tonight. Cry out to him in your time of need. Embrace him in the midst of your troubles. Be confident in his unfailing love. He is with you. His promises are true. His promises are true. Just be reminded of that. The God we serve. Yeah, you've heard this before. Maybe you haven't. But let it sink in. It's times like this that the Lord just wants to remind us who he is, how unfailing his love truly is. You are always in his sight, and you are always in his grip if you look to him. I look to the hills. Look to him. Like when a runner's pacing and sprinting, they don't look at their feet. They don't look to their left or their right, the opponent they're against. They look forward. They look to the goal. It keeps them going. Look to him. And I promise you, because he promises us, he'll never leave you nor forsake you, never let you go out of his grip. His eyes are on you.